This time, I Know Not the Mind Probe, episode number 95, Honey, I Shrunk the Doctor.
Welcome to not the Mind Probe.
Are you a child in this
Was I
scenario?
doing? No. I was trying to go for it, but I didn't have any warm up time. That Rick Moranis right? Remember?
Really? The Mind Probe? Yeah.
What was his voice? But that we're taking his voice when he was Lewis in Ghostbusters.
In Ghostbusters.
Yeah. And really, I'm just doing Flynn doing Rick Moranis in the Big Show 3.
As we all know, our friend
as
Flynn,
everybody knows, everybody knows Flynn, everybody knows Big Show 3.
And from the Duke University Improv's Big Show number 3, which of course we all know and occurred in 1990.
It's available on VHS in my closet. If you're interested,
I let my membership lapse on your video store in your closet, so I can't get any of that stuff anymore.
That was only 30 years ago, 20-something years ago. Yeah, so a lot of people should have seen it. Was a brilliant Oscar parody, sort of, with timely references to Jimmy Stewart. Oh, it was a good times, good memories. We wrote that together. We wrote that on a car trip. Yeah. Well, for those of you who do not tune in to hear a trip down memory lane, this is a podcast where we watch and rank the first 300 Doctor Who stories. My name is John Grant. I'm a lifelong Doctor Who fan. I've been watching it for 39 amazing years.
And my name is Porter Mason. John's been asking me to watch Doctor Who for 27 years. A few years ago, I said yes. Each episode, we look at 2 stories. For a little bit of time, we're going to kind of talk about 3. But we talk about the newer series that started back in 2005. We're going through that in order up until the 300th episode. And then Doctor Who sommelier John pairs that story with a classic story. And then we're also going to talk about the brand new Who that's just happening right now in 2023 and 2024.
If you sketched it out, it'd be like a line like here to here, and then leap back here, and then jump forward here, and then come back. Yeah,
the key is that David Tennant is in all these episodes. That's the linking theme. But John, what are we going to talk about this episode?
This episode, all right, we're moving on. We just got off the Orient Express with the 12th Doctor and Clara, and then she deceived Danny, and they're back off on adventures, and so we have the next exciting adventure in their series. This is called Flatline, and this involves the TARDIS with the Doctor inside shrinking. Well, it's really
not
cute,
the Kiefer Sutherland vehicle Flatliners.
No, totally different. That's a lot more terrifying, apparently. Yeah, this one, shrinking TARDIS. And so, again, this was a relatively easy one to pair. I went all the way back to the beginning of the 2nd season of Doctor Who. This is the first Doctor, Ian, Barbara, Susan, in Planet of Giants.
But first, John, First, John, we're going to talk about the third special in the new era.
The new era.
The Giggle.
The Giggle, yeah. Pretty good. What'd you think of it? It was good, right?
I liked it.
All right, on to the next.
I liked it. I'm, again, as I've said with these specials, I'm somewhat impatient to get through the new David Tennant era.
Yeah.
But this did bring an end to it, and I thought it...
For the moment.
Well, that's true. But it did at least... So, well, I mean... I guess we're gonna lightly get into spoilers. I mean, don't listen to us talk about this if you haven't watched it. But it's on Disney Plus, by the way. Now that's the other thing. I have to span 3 different apps to watch these.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
I thought what they tried to pull off at the end is that basically the Doctor, by the time of Jodie Whittaker, that's why it's funny to go back to David Tennant anyway, has become sort of so unmoored and lonely and out there that he kind of needed to split off and just have a minute to himself for a little bit so that the Doctor could continue on while this other version of the Doctor kind of goes and retires and enjoys his golden years. And anyway, I don't know if I buy
it. It's like they skimmed out all the baggage, and then the other doctor gets to retire, not feel guilty, and then the new one is off and like woohoo.
Right, and that's why
I
I was like, okay, if you needed to do these 3 episodes in order to do that, and then you wanted to bring back Donna because this was sort of the rightful person. First of all, to kind of
close
find
her
a better
ending
for her.
I think they wanted her to be
she
happy.
now forgets everything that ever happened, and
right.
So I guess I was sort of like, okay, if that's why you probably feel like you needed to do that because you wanted to get everyone back and watching David Tennant and
it was a little bit of reset. And it was celebrate the anniversary, so we'll go back to a very popular pairing. So apparently so this all started when during the pandemic there were these this Doctor Who magazine editor or contributor Emily Cook started these tweet alongs, and they're basically, let's watch Doctor Who episodes during the pandemic,
the new ones or
the post 2005 because there were stuff coming out. And what we'll do is we'll all start watching them at the same time, and we'll all tweet as we go. And then she got David Tennant and Russell T Davies and all these people to also tweet along. And during one of them with Catherine Tate.
Wait, why didn't we do this? Weren't we watching them at the same time?
I don't go on the Twitter. My goodness. Yeah. Anyway.
All right.
I don't need other people telling me how Doctor Who is. I know how it is. I tell other people.
But we could have joined the conversation, John, and maybe some people would have watched
would have promoted
the podcast.
That's ridiculous. I don't do this for other people. Anyway, so they started talking, David Tennant and Catherine Tate started talking with Russell T Davies, and they said, isn't this fun? Like, this is fun. Maybe we should get the band back together and do this. Wouldn't it be fun? And I think the initial idea was maybe we just go back and we do like 1 or 2 episodes as like a fun little treat or something as a special before the new showrunner. But then that sparked apparently Russell T Davies to be like, hey, maybe I should just take over the entire show again. So it started him down that path. But then they still had this idea they wanted to come back. And I think the initial plan was, well, we'll just do like a flashback and we'll cut in right to the gaps, right? So we'll just fill in the gap. It won't be a continuation. It'll be filling the gap. And then I guess Russell came up with this storyline with a 14th Doctor. I guess it's a fun way to make a surprise ending to 13th. And then, so the controversy that's rocked the world is this bi generation, right? So now there's 2 doctors.
Sure.
And what you would find out if you watch, and I have not, but apparently if you watch the commentary, so they did like a DVD commentary basically that goes along with the episode. You can kind of
watch it in Disney Plus.
I don't know if it's in Disney Plus, but in the BBC, I think their red button or whatever their little special thing is. So Rusty Davies, Dave Tennant, whatever. Rusty Davies explains that apparently for some reason that happened now all up and down the Doctor's timeline, that all the Doctors bi-generated. I don't understand it either. And his argument is now that, and so they all bi-generated, and then each one lived out their lives. And he says, well, this means now that any of the old Doctors can come back, and that the fact that they've aged doesn't matter anymore, right? We can just be like, they were living out their own timeline, like David Tennant is now, apparently. I don't know why it was necessary to explain that to everybody.
I don't understand that, but they didn't. We saw them regenerate.
Right, but timey-wimey or something like that. I did see people were complaining a little bit, and at first I thought this too. They're like, well, now that means David Tennant's just around, hanging around.
He's just around.
Shooty Guy was going to be like coming back to Earth. I was like, well, David Tennant might be there. But as more I thought about it, I'm like, well, but it's time travel. They're all technically all just hanging around. Like, it really is not a huge change.
Well, what I thought it was fun the way it set it up, and I did think the dynamic between the 2 of them was really good.
It was great. Yep.
And I don't envision Shruti Gatwa like visiting David Tennant because he was sort of like, hey buddy, like why don't you rest? I'm gonna be off doing doctor stuff. I am ready to go. And David Tennant was clearly like, hey, have a cup of tea and just have a meal here.
Have a nice quiet. Mostly, and I think it was great. It's also meant you had a multi-doctor story, like at least a short multi-doctor story for the anniversary, which is nice, right? You had 2 doctors on the screen at once. That's always good. For the
50th anniversary. Yeah, yes, we did have that.
60th, you have this. So for this one.
Sorry, was this the 60th or
60th? Yeah. So you got a little of that. You got Mel coming back. I thought Mel was great.
Though, right? So Mel was great. But for the 60th anniversary, they're usually blowing it out a bit more than this, right?
You would have thought. I mean, the 50th was, maybe they were just like, 50th was a lot. And we usually do 10th, 20th, 30th, 10th, 20th, 50th have all done big stuff with big multi-doctors. I think what people thought there was going to be more, but I'll take this as a little nod to it. I liked Kate was back, and then Neil Patrick Harris.
It was fun.
Steals his show. He was really good, I thought, as a Storymaker.
Much better than the initial celestial toy maker, in my opinion. Very creepy. I guess my thing is with the whole 3 episodes being used for that, I guess you kind of had an episode where you're resurrecting Donna,
right?
And then you had this episode. I kind of question where you're bisecting the Doctor and having that. I question whether you needed the second one in between. Because I'd rather use those 4 specials to get 2 Chudigatwa stories, full Chudigatwa stories.
Yep.
And then have the like you said, it's a twist at the end when you see the David Tennant thing. So it worked for that of the Jodie Whittaker season. And then and then we get Donna back and kind of explain that. And then we wrap up why David Tennant is there. I feel like that second one was too much. I didn't mind the episode, but it was just like too much of this is just fan service. We just want to see Donna Noble and David Tennant, and
and
it's
not
fine. But like we have lots of those episodes.
Study.
They're great. Go back and watch them. I don't know.
Maybe it was meant to be a character study more. I mean, maybe it's more significant. I go back and watch. There is some stuff in that, and then in the latest one too about the toy maker, and he comes from sort of the edge of the universe, and some stuff about the rules have changed. There's sort of some implications that the rules have changed substantially, and this maybe gets into Doctor Who being more fantasy or whatever, and the sense that somehow the toy maker is so powerful that he's changed the universe in some way or changed the Doctor. It's an interesting some hints that maybe. Well, obviously there'll be lingering effects from this, but yes, hopefully they just kind of go on. And Shooty was great. I like Matt Smith vibes great. In terms of like how quickly he just kind of explodes on the screen, and you're like, he was very
like Matt Smith, David Tennant vibes of like, okay, wow, okay, here you are, and quite a bit of. I don't know if it's male gaze, female gaze, but he didn't have pants on the whole episode, so.
The clothes split, right? If you notice, like he had had the shirt and the tie, and David Tennant was in a t-shirt with the vest. The clothes split with them, so David Tennant was not wearing any underwear, presumably.
Yeah. Yes. True.
There you go. There you go.
All right. Well, let's move on to and so next episode of the podcast, we'll talk more about the final special. And then when do the episodes start after the actual season?
May 2024, apparently.
Okay, so we'll take a break from talking about this, obviously, for a while.
But there's plenty of Doctor Who to talk about.
We'll record like one other episode before then. But not too long. But now let us return to our
simpler times.
Yeah,
they're just
Flatline.
2 series.
Yeah, Series 8, Episode 9. This is, as we mentioned, Clara and the 11th Doctor. This is
12th.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. There's too many doctors. See, they're all bisecting. It's very difficult now.
Every even. Well, no. I was to say every odd doctor is David Tennant, but every even doctor is David Tennant.
And this is quite literally a doctor in a box story.
Mm-hmm.
But the doctor is stuck inside a box. So, this aired on the 18th of October, 2014. It is story 250 of the 300 stories that we're going to be covering of Doctor Who, and John has a clip, and I will play that for you now.
Well, I wonder what caused this. I don't think we're bigger, are we?
Bristol! Doctor, we're in Bristol!
And 120 miles from where we should be. Impressive.
No, not impressive. Annoying.
No, this is impressive. This is annoying. TARDIS never does this. This is huge. Well, not literally huge. Slightly smaller than usual, which is huge.
Yes, I get it. You're excited. When can I go home?
Your house isn't going anywhere. But neither is mine until I get this figured out. Could you not just let me enjoy this moment of not knowing something? I mean, they happen so rarely. Look, I don't think this is dangerous, but I wouldn't like you to get squished accidentally. Anyway, I need you to help me find out what's caused this.
Fine. I'll go take a look around.
Yeah. All right.
Discovering the TARDIS, tiny TARDIS.
Yeah. So right, and that's the big part of the whole thing gets kicked off by we separate the Doctor and Clara, and because the TARDIS starts shrinking right after this exchange, the Doctor gets back inside the TARDIS and it shrinks quite a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
It's still bigger on the inside, so he's normal size, but can't get out at this point. And so Clara has to become the main protagonist of the story, though the Doctor's quite literally in her ear the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
He shares an earpiece with her, so they're kind of talking to each other. But this is a Clara story. Claire's driving this, and in fact, she even takes on saying, like, I'm the doctor today. She tells, I believe, the other characters in the story that she's the doctor.
Yeah.
Which, that was, I mean, I liked. It was I don't know if I totally bought that she would do it, but I liked that she did it. So she ends up in, I love the way they're just so upset to be in Bristol. So she ends up in Bristol.
It's great banter. Good banter.
And there's a group of people in community service who are painting her back over graffiti.
Miscreants.
Including one guy, Riggsy, who's actually a graffiti artist. And then what we start to find out is that what's happened, and they'll refer to this like, oh, you don't know what's happening, is that people are gone missing all the time. And I wasn't quite sure if she was the first person to piece this together, but they've gone missing, and where they're turning up is they're ending up as paintings on walls. And we see this in the teaser at the beginning of the episode, where someone is sort of sucked into the wall. So
it's kind of like they're distorted, right? So they're like sort of, it's like from a weird angle. It's a pretty cool effect, actually, because like, yeah, it's like I won't say magic eye, but it's like a thing where it's like, yeah, it looks like a squiggly line, but then if you turn on the right angle or something like that, like it's a face, or it was pretty cool.
And so she becomes the doctor. She brings Riggsy in pretty quickly as to what's going on. She uses the psychic paper. She uses the screwdriver. She's using all the doctor accoutrements.
She comes up with a lot of the plans.
Yeah.
She does she fools them. It's basically a Looney Tunes where she paints the door, the fake door on the thing.
Yes.
That's pretty clever. I thought she was very clever in this episode. I like
she is. Yeah. So right. So they figure out that it's this two-dimensionality thing happening. They see that it's in the walls. I think they've referred to at the beginning that it's a classic story, something in a room. I don't remember, but they refer to this as like, oh, it's a classic mystery.
A locked room mystery.
Locked room mystery.
Yeah.
And so Riggsy and the doctor are going through like, well, what are common solutions to locked room mysteries? Anyway, so they are able to escape with that as these whatever's happening on the walls are closing in on them. And the doctor ultimately figures out these are creatures from a two-dimensional world who they call, or he knows as they refer to them as the boneless. I guess that's
he names them.
Name them that? Okay.
Yes, and it's sort of it's a wonderful story throughout, but this moment just always grated to me. It's sort of like he makes this whole speech about how he's the doctor and he fights the monsters, and he's like, I name you the boneless. Which you're watching it the first time and possibly the second or third time, even with his accent a little bit, I did not know what he was saying. So it was like this dramatic, like, I name you the and I was like, what do I know? And then also it's not that impressive a name. So it's kind of a really overselling it there.
No, and it's kind of goofy. It was a great speech, but anyway, prior to that, Clara takes charge. She leads this group of people, including one really salty guy who's like doesn't want to hear anything from anybody. They head down into it's like a subway tunnel.
The train, the underground train there,
and they're kind of escaping there. They figure out more about who these guys are. She is keeping the doctor in her purse the whole time. And he's helping, though some of the things that he's giving her like kind of work, kind of don't. And so they ultimately throw them off the track. They try, not quite literally, they send a train at them. And then the final sort of thing. And by the way, actually, this is very similar to the other plot we'll discuss. This is all separate from the TARDIS shrinking. That's a separate thing happening. The TARDIS is shrinking. Well, I guess they're drawing energy from him.
Yeah, and it was something to do with power from them. But
that's true, because
it's tenuously linked.
So then at the end, she gets them all to focus. Like you said, she quite literally, like, they get Riggsy. I thought in a nice little move there, he's a painter. And she's like, okay, well, I need you to paint something.
Paint a realistic thing.
Paint something on the wall so that they all put their attention toward it and focus their power on it. What they're actually doing is powering back up the TARDIS. He emerges. Gives a good doctor speech, and we get to see a nice Capaldi doctor speech. Exactly. I fight monsters. And so we kind of emerge. I thought it was interesting that a couple of our other kind of red shirts here do die, but Riggsy doesn't, and the antagonist guy doesn't.
Yeah, the jerk.
And so there's the jerk. Yeah, there's kind of a nice moment at the end where he's like kind of appreciative. He is actually appreciative, but he's not at all changed by this experience. He's still terrible. And they were like, and Claire's sort of dealing with the fact that she was in charge, so some of the people died on her watch. not just here, but across the country, probably people died. And the guy's like, yeah, well, they're probably worth the smartest, bulbs in the box anyway, so don't worry about it. She's not given a lot of comfort by that. So yeah, we did see a little bit here too about, do we see some about her and Danny and
she's on the phone with him when the monster attacks or whatever. She's trying to cover up that she's not with because he doesn't know
they've had a conversation that she's sort of done here.
She's
right?
done with the doctor, so he thinks she's just out doing something or whatever. Yeah, then she's having this whole, she's being attacked while she's on the phone with him and trying to cover up what's going on, and not very well.
A little bit of shades of the very slow ending to Rory and Amy, where it's like, okay, like are we just gonna repeatedly have this thing of like, yeah, you really shouldn't be the doctor, and I'm really not, but I am, and then we're gonna fight again about it, or not fight, but I don't know. It just, I don't know. Well, I mean, like, we'll see how it resolves itself.
It resolves itself quickly.
Yeah. So yeah, a fun plot, and like you said, really cool effects. Very interesting effects.
I like this one a lot. This is also Jamie Mathewson, who wrote the run immediately before The Mummy on the Orient Express. Somehow it just ended up 2 in a row. Yep, which is great. Rixie is played by Joivan Wade, Joivan. I apologize, Joivan, if you're listening, call in and tell me how to pronounce your name. I always make sure I pronounce people's names right. I think he's great. He's a really good sort of companion. Again, it's sort of like the engineer from the last one. You're kind of like, if Clara wanted to leave, Rixie would be awesome. Yeah, like bring him along.
And I liked how the doctor, as this doctor does, basically everyone like wrote him off completely.
Yeah.
And then it basically, it takes anyone saying like one particular, a thing in a smart way, in a particular type of smart, that he's like, no, I'm all in on you. You're a good person. I'm going to keep you around.
You think outside the box or something.
Before then he was calling him like, this mouth breather over here, whatever he was calling him.
The effects work is actually pretty good. It could be ridiculous, but they actually, I think, pull it off. The bit where the doctor's hand, the little cousin it thing, basically where he uses his hand to knock himself off the thing, was very good. I think the monster is pretty clever. Although again, this is a dramatic labeling. I'm not sure the boneless is the greatest name. But yeah, really, it's a Clara story, and she's great. I think we're finally getting some character because now she's got this. I mean, yes, it's a bit cliche, but she's got this thing going on with Danny and lying to him, and so that's interesting. She's and then there was a little speech too at the end. You see the doctor, and this is foreshadowing even almost basically a season ahead. Like, we're actually into stuff that happens next season now. This worry about like, oh, you were really good at being the doctor today, and that may be a little bit worrying. Like, maybe you're changing here, and maybe not in a good way, or maybe this is somewhat, we should be concerned about this, right? That you shouldn't be enjoying this quite so much. Your life was in danger. You were almost killed several times, et cetera, but you're having a good time. And, that might be something to be worried about. So this is setting up an arc that we're going to see through more of this season and into next, even with her. And, but it's great. I think we're finally getting something besides the impossible girl, and then the random girl who we don't know who she works for, what she does for a living, or what her job is. And then now she's got some kind of interesting story here.
All right, well, why don't we move on to our classic episode? We're headed back to the William Hartnell era. We're in season 2. It's the first story in season 2, and we still have our original group, right? We have
Barbara, Ian, and Susan.
Yes, Susan's still checking in. So it's great to see her. I haven't seen her in a while. It's called Planet of the Giants. It's the 9th Doctor Who story ever. A 3-parter, which I'm a fan of.
Like that.
It aired October the 31st. It aired. First episode aired on Halloween through the 14th of November 1964. It is called The Planet of the Giants. As I said, I have the wrong clip pulled up, so I'm going to get the right one.
Okay,
John, what do you know about Planet of the Giants?
Well, I will tell you. I can tell you now that it is a 3-part story, but it was actually filmed as a 4-part story. And then they realized, they were like, and you know what? I think you of all people might be like, they should have done this more often. They were like, it's just doesn't have enough to sustain 4 parts. So they edited the 3 parts 3 and 4 together, and they made it just one part.
All right. Well,
the original footage is lost, but
let's listen
here we go.
This clip.
But what does it mean? Look, you needn't keep it a secret from us.
What?
Doctor, don't keep it in suspense.
Oh, don't go on with these futile questions, please. Can't you understand? Can't you see?
No, we can't. That's just it.
We were just about to materialize when the doors opened and we hadn't properly adjusted.
You mean something went out of the ship?
No, that's impossible.
Came inside.
Oh, please, don't keep talking on the 20th century level. I'm talking about time travel. Neither of you can understand what I'm talking about. I can see that.
How could we? You've never explained it to us.
My dear boy,
Grandfather, everything's all right. There isn't a fault anywhere, not even a yellow standby.
But there must be something wrong, Susan. I shall have to check that fault indicator myself and make sure. Excuse me.
Oh, I do wish you wouldn't talk in riddles.
So do I. Susan, perhaps you can help us.
I just know the most dangerous moment is at the point of materialization. Nothing's ever happened to us before. Well, the doors have never opened like that before.
Well, happily no harm's been done. It's most puzzling. Oh, my dear Barbara, was I rude to you just now? So I'm so sorry. I always forget the niceties under pressure.
They're both, great. All four of them in that one are sort of like, I like there's a lull there in the middle, and Ian and Barbara are like, oh, hey, Susan, you're here. You got anything?
Yeah, that's why I picked that one. It's like there's a little original crew dynamic there. But yes, I love that. Is also, I'm not sure if it's that scene or somewhere in there in this first season is very famous. I don't know if the recording exists, sadly, but the tale from the cast is that Bill Hartnell sometimes had trouble remembering his lines or getting his lines right, and Susan goes to see if there's anything damaged. She goes to check the fault locator. Which is it's basically your instrument panel to see where any of the damage. So apparently in one take, he said, Susan, quick, go check the fornicator. Sadly, that did not make it into the final. Famous blooper.
I enjoyed Susan in this. Like, Susan very much toned down by season 2.
Yeah. Oh, she leaves next story. Next story is Dalek Invasion of Earth, so she's
there you go.
Her way
Good.
out.
I don't know. I feel like she had just sort of gotten into like, all right, I can handle this, Susan, and then they're like, Susan has to go away now.
Back to her own planet.
Wow, Dalek Invasion of Earth was right after this. What a shift in tone.
And there's a suspicion, I think even there's a note, like one of the other reasons it may have been shortened to 3 episodes was that the management, because the Daleks were enormously popular already, and management was kind of like, hey, can we just maybe get to the Dalek story?
Wow.
This one about terrifying giant ants is great, but could we move to the Dalek story? That seems to be what people want.
This Planet of the Giants, or as I like to call it, what if we just let the prop department have a little fun? What if we just let them decide what we're going to do? Yeah, so and I guess this is what I was more thinking of when I said the two things were the TARDIS shrinking was unrelated. Because in this story, they show up, they're a little confused as to what's going on. Mm-hmm. They think they're in a planet of giants, and then they realize, no, we've shown up shrunken. Mm-hmm. And they don't really know why. And
space
then
pressure. The doctor's like, the door's open and the space pressure, that's one of the lines, the space pressure crashed.
Yeah. And then you get involved in the plot here, and the plot is about someone who's making a pesticide that's not that good.
Yep. Little Silent Spring.
And then so you're kind of thinking, right, exactly. Yeah, timely for 1964, certainly. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, timely in any moment, certainly timely now, but definitely this was being discussed a lot more then as the pesticides.
The scientists were just forming the conspiracy to fake climate change in the early 60s.
It was just beginning.
It wasn't until now when they really got in concert and really agreed to fake it.
I mean, the pesticides they were shelling out at that point were really like, they were like, why don't we just dump gasoline on everything?
What about military grade mustard gas, but we'll just tone it down a little for the garden. Yeah.
But I think what's interesting about the plot is I guess I see how they're tying in with the plot, but it's sort of just this separate thing happening. There's nothing related to why they're being shrunk or anything. Like, they're being shrunk, and because of that, they are able to feel the effects of pesticides as though they are these small creatures, and that is sort of the point.
Yeah, just that. But also, they would have been able to resolve. I mean, the plot is very straight. The guy murders the guy in the garden, and he's trying to cover up the thing. If they had been full size, they would have been able to just call the police and resolve the whole thing in 5 minutes.
It's just like a corporate espionage thing.
Yeah, so it's just like it's an interesting, like, what if you just face this very basic dilemma, but you were tiny. How tall do you think they are? Because the scale seems to be all over the place.
Well, yes, they are in a sink. They're about half of a sink drain. Yeah, so they're like an inch. But then, like, the ants are very huge ants.
Yeah, huge ants. And then, but then, like the matchsticks, I think they're smaller than the matchsticks. They're also in a garden path. So they appear to be they're in actually pebbles. So yeah, the scale kind of goes all over the place. And then they keep getting into things that can be picked up. That's also like, quick, hide in this matchbox. It's like, no, don't go in there.
Well, that's why when I say I do really think it's probably talking with the prop department and say, like, here's the general idea. What do you think you can make for us?
Mm-hmm.
And they just work around that. But I also just think then the main plot of, again, like, thwarting this corporate espionage of this, an industrialist trying to make this poisonous pesticide or dangerous pesticide. It just seems so below the doctor. It's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you should do that. Anyway, Susan touches the
Barbara.
She's hurt, so they're trying to save her. That's what they're kind of involved in.
In a wonderful sci-fi or all television show, which is a trope, which is touch the poison thing, but then don't tell anyone you've touched the poison thing. Keep it to yourself. And then everyone's like, why are you acting so strange, Barbara? As long as no one touched the poison thing, you should be fine. I didn't touch the poison.
And then everything is obviously very difficult because they're small and they're trying to do these things which they can't do because they're small, and just a lot. Thankfully, not 4 episodes. I thought, like, fun to watch because they did do a good job with the sets and the thing. It is fun. And then it's very much, how do they get big again at the end? They just do. They just figure it out, and now they're bigger. Yep. The space gravity or whatever it was reversed, so that's fine. So a pretty simple and straightforward thing. It's really more just about the fun of the special effects, and I think they were enjoying themselves doing it. It was an enjoyable enough thing. Like I said, this cast, it's funny that they part ways. Well, I mean, not all of them, but
yeah,
they split up after this next story.
They're gelling.
But
yeah.
I thought they were like working well. It was nice to see them again. I like this group. So.
Yeah, I think, especially Ian and Barbara. I love anything that they're in because they just take everything in stride. And they're like, well, I guess we're mini now. All right, figure this out. They've definitely come a long way. This is by Louis Marks, who's written not many other. He wrote Day of the Daleks later on, a few others. This is famously one of the original, sort of in the original brief of Doctor Who, they sort of, Sidney Newman, the creator, threw out ideas about interesting storylines they could do. And one of them, he says, wouldn't it be good to do stuff where you just make ordinary things like a garden path seem really scary? And this idea that they would shrink on some level and that would be part of the storyline. I think they were going to do it in the first season. They kind of pushed this to season 2. Yeah, the prop department having a good time. There's some back projection of the cat and some other. They have some stuff they're doing. None of which just blows you away, except when you think about, well, they actually were doing this live. Like, I mean, it wasn't they weren't broadcasting live, but they were basically filming live to tape.
I think it looks pretty good for the era.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. And yeah, I mean, they come up with I think some interesting, like, all right, we got to get up the drain. What could go wrong here? They have to get the telephone off the hook, which, if you think about how heavy telephones were back in the day, and they use the corks to get the phone off. And then, but then they're like, oh, they can't hear you because your voices are too high. I thought that was a clever little thing. And then they used the Bunsen burner, which, the funny Ian running at the matchbook with the match. And it is it's a fun little story. This is directors Mervyn Pinfield and Dougie Camfield. Douglas Camfield did the last episode, I think, or last 2. Mervyn Pinfield is the guy, if you remember, from Adventure in Space and Time. He was kind of the technical guy that they, and he was the one who invented the teleprompter, or invented the, so you see the reflection. Yeah, he invented the teleprompter, and he was the sort of most technical director, and that's why he was assigned to this one. You can, if you have the Blu-ray, you can. They have reconstructed. They did not have the original footage, sadly, of episodes 3 and 4, but they have reconstructed the 2 parts, so you can see what they
lengthen
like.
it.
Yeah, they lengthen it, and they force you to watch it. Like, you can't watch it. No,
man.
If you do, it is the editing together was not entirely successful because they're sort of they do leap very quickly. It's not quite clear why they're doing what they're doing, and like why are they trying to light the thing on fire, and why were they doing it at that point and stuff like that. But again, it doesn't really matter because it's not a complex story, and yeah, all you're interested in is like sort of seeing these people in this situation. It's a good one.
You got a friend in Thebes. You got a friend in Thebes. You're a doctor. You're a Doctor Who. This is anything. Yeah, dude.
I just went into Bill Cosby. Went from Randy Newman to
I
Bill
know.
Cosby. With the Jello pudding pops.
Randy Newman and Bill Cosby are
on a spectrum.
on a spectrum. We were talking about Bill Cosby prior to the show, as we often do.
Yeah, we often do. We admire the man. Yeah,
just his whole everything about him.
No, stand-up guy.
We are. That's not true, but we are adherents of the. What is true is that we're adherents of the repeating themes here in No Not the Mind Probe. We like to celebrate topics and ideas that are threaded throughout Doctor Who and throughout all time and space in our culture. John, what did you want to talk about for these episodes?
Let's talk about shrinking. Should we shrink people?
Ooh.
No, let's talk about let's talk about companion types. This took me a while to come up with a theme for this, but I actually think we had some types here because between these two and the Giggle, we have a lot of interesting companion types here. And as I went through them, I realized we don't have maybe the most archetypal companion type, and maybe calling into question whether that's truly maybe that isn't the archetype. So we've got Barbara and Ian, who are middle-aged school teachers, sort of adult figures, almost the leads in the sense of the early stories.
And very rarely, occasionally Barbara, but not like in distress. They're not like being saved by the Doctor in that way. Right.
In fact, sometimes they're saving the Doctor.
Yeah.
You have Susan, who is Dr. Light, very light, but she's an alien. She's experienced. She understands a lot more what's going on and things like that. Then you have Clara in the Flatline, and
who is the creator and end of all space and time and solves all things at all times.
The Alpha and the Omega, all things. But she's a very confident traveler. In fact, it always has been kind of very confident.
Yeah,
traveler with the Doctor, maybe close to the archetype. You've got Mel coming back for the Giggle. Mel and Donna are both kind of in the same boat in that they're both older, experienced. Mel, so you have seen. So you've seen the first Mel, you've seen the last Mel. Mel went off in space with Glitz after Dragonfire, and then they had this brief moment in the episode where they're like, "Oh yeah, I came back." Is a quick explanation of how she came back. Now she's working at Unit, and so she's older and experienced and things like that. And just throw it in there for the heck of it. You got Rigsy, right, who's sort of the temporary companion stand-in and stuff like that. So what's interesting here is you don't have the classic screaming, the pretty young thing who's exactly right. So I just think it's interesting. Are these what other companion types are we missing? If we're missing any, and which do you prefer of these companion types? Which would you like to see more of?
Well, I haven't seen a lot of, except for these very old ones of the big, maybe I have, but it feels less common to have this big group of companions, this big passel of companions he's going with, and that's how it started off, right, with 3 right off the bat.
Yep.
I know we are getting to that, especially in the Jodie Whittaker
Jodie
era.
Whittaker's going to have 3. We've had them. There are sometimes we've had Tegan, Nyssa, and Adric, and Tegan, Nyssa, and Turlo. Right. In the 5th Doctor era, we've got some threes companies, but that was unusual.
And I guess Amy and Rory, sort of a unit. Yeah. But anyway, so I'm kind of interested in that. That seems more challenging to do correctly, just because there's more people. I don't know.
A lot of people
it's more to get the dynamics right and have it be interesting, and not have someone just feel like an extra person in every story.
Which is why I think it makes sense to do the Amy and Rory thing, which is where at least they have a relationship. Like Tegan, Nyssa, and Adric are just 3 random people. So you have to create a dynamic for them, and then you have to apply that dynamic consistently across episodes, or have to develop it.
Seems more challenging.
It's hard to do, right? So they just didn't bother. Whereas Amy and Rory, they're like, hey, they're husband and wife. Everybody work with that. It's a lot easier to sort of have that.
But I mean, so I guess without thinking too much which type I like or not, I think of my favorite companions, I do like Barbara and Ian, or just the ones I like. I like Barbara and Ian. I do like Donna, maybe my favorite, or definitely not near the top. And then I like Sarah Jane and Amy. Mm-hmm. Those are probably my favorites. So that's kind of a mix. I mean, like you would say Sarah Jane is probably the uber damsel in distress, but done really well. She's very strong and confident. She's not really damsel in distress.
Yeah,
I mean,
she gets into scrapes, but she's not.
Yeah.
She's not.
And I would say Amy too. Mm-hmm. Is a good, like, she's confident, she comes in her own, so she as we discussed in a lot of her episodes, she often, and Donna too, had this. So maybe this is what I like. I like that both of them would end up being like, the doctor kind of treats them like, I'm in charge here and I'll help you. But then they're often the one who actually solves the riddle at the end.
They're like, you're not. Yeah, you're not in charge of us.
So I like them. So I guess, and then so thinking about the ones I like is like, I like kind of a mix there. So I don't think there's necessarily a one size fits all, but I do think, as we said, I think it's just easier to have more of a single person there, because if you figure out the dynamic that works well with that single person, then that's just working. And if you're adding more people into it, then gets more confusing. And then as I've discussed less about the type, I enjoy more in the modern Doctor Who. It seems like they rarely did this with the old Doctor Who. I like the characters having some kind of a backstory, so you understand how this fits into their lives. And I think definitely Amy being the best example of that, and then Donna to an extent. I think Donna did too. At least, again, it wasn't that her character story was such an amazing arc, but I knew where she was coming from, and I knew like kind of what she wanted, and
she had that great she has that great like, I was, I'm a loser, I'm a temp who has no prospects, my mother is harping. I remember the mother was pretty brutal to her and stuff like that, and it's like sort of her arc is she realizes she's actually really smart and she's the most important person in the universe at one point, and she can do competent stuff.
I mean, that's a great example too, because like that kind of has annoyed me about Clara, certainly annoyed me about aspects of Rose, but Donna was also the most important person in the universe there. And I thought, I don't know, maybe it's just Catherine Tate, like maybe there's just something about the character that like I kind of liked it with that and didn't mind it, whereas it became a little bit trying to me how often Rose and now Clara are like, yes, randomly he met this person and they are the key to everything at all times, and are the
it's interesting. I wonder how much has changed or is effective of our ages. So like the companion is supposed to be the audience identification figure, right? Obviously nobody, hopefully, or generally most people don't identify with the Doctor. People aren't like, oh yeah, I'm like that guy, I'm 1,000 years old. No, everything. You don't have that, right? So the companion is supposed to
question mark suspenders. Yep, this is me.
On the nose. You're supposed to identify or relate to the companion, which would make sense. And the show's aimed at intelligent 12-year-olds and above, like, but kids-ish, and kids tend to latch onto a figure that's older than them, like one step up, right? They're gonna so it would make sense the young companion, that would be the one they would sort of target. But certainly now, my favorites are I love Barbara and Ian. I think they're great.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's just because it's like now I'm just like, yeah, that's how I'd be. I'd probably be as brave as Ian, but I'd be a little bit more skeptical. And Dawn, or I feel like Dawn is the one where it's like I'd like to be that. Like I'd like to be out of my depth, but also sort of a little bit brassy and like, I'm not going to take your guff there, buddy. Like I'm going to, tell the Doctor off or call him on his nonsense or something like that. Which is also why I feel like I like an older Mel too. I liked Mel as a companion.
I liked Mel,
and I like older Mel is even better.
Yeah, I liked her in this more than I liked her. Although, I mean, again, those seasons didn't have the best writing.
Yeah, and they're short.
But she was great in this, and you know what I liked about her is that she seemed very at ease and comfortable with her and her spot in all this, and happy to be there, and it was great. The other thing about the companions I'd point out is there's two that I really like that I feel like were not done well by the writers and then sort of swept under the table, and now that I think of it, they remind me of each other, which is Martha and the woman who was the scientist with the third Doctor.
Oh, Liz Shaw.
Yeah. Liz. They remind me of one another because they both come on as very smart, accomplished, not trying to find themselves. They found themselves. Like they're accomplished in their field. They're smart. Obviously, the Doctor knows more about them in terms of the whole universe. I liked both of them, and it just seems like the writers couldn't figure out how to make them work.
Yeah.
And so they both kind of not unceremoniously, but just left. Well, actually, Liz Shaw definitely left unceremoniously, but
didn't even get a goodbye scene.
But Martha, never really became a huge thing, and I just really enjoyed both of them from the beginning. But for whatever reason, didn't seem to work. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's like, I guess, well, the Doctor's sort of a broken person, so maybe like a person who's got it together. It's like it's a weird.
Didn't know what to do with them.
Hey, I'll throw in one other companion, a big Finnish companion who was very popular. Was Evelyn Smythe, who was paired with the sixth Doctor. And she was a much older, like grandmotherly history professor. And she ended up traveling with the Sixth Doctor, and she liked to bake chocolate cakes, and she wore woolly jumpers and all that. And she was fantastic. Great companion. Maybe that, well, you know what? Age identification, I identify with her now. My audience identification fears. I'm like, oh yeah, I would like to wear a sweater. Yeah. So, again, I think that, but it shows it can work. And so it's interesting to see sort of, it's going to be interesting to see now we have a very young doctor and we have a very young companion, as we'll talk about next episode coming in. This is back to sort of that classic pairing. But, as we talk through this, I'm sort of like thinking more, it's like, that classic pairing maybe isn't that classic. Like Joe Grant was sort of the most damsel in distressy one. And maybe some of the earlier ones, like Vic, I don't know, I think he was a space kid, but, maybe Polly and maybe.
I mean, Victoria was very young.
Victoria, yeah.
But I mean, she wasn't in it for that long, was she?
We just haven't watched a lot of her
Jamie's
stuff.
one of my favorite companions.
Yeah, and he's just his own thing, isn't he?
he's up for anything.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he's kind of he's almost Ian, but from Scotland. I
think there's not a great pattern to this. I agree with what you're saying, which is that we think of it as that it's always the young kind of attractive woman who's screaming her head off, and certainly I think maybe they aired side of that, right? Again, I didn't mind Leela, but clearly that's why they brought Leela in. And
but she's not a screamer. Leela's a completely out of the box character.
And clearly like
hot, but
clearly like No, and I liked her, but obviously they also had her on there for eye candy.
Yeah,
and then you have Perry, who is probably the worst example
definitely
of
eye candy. Yeah.
Well, but also like the kind of just gets in trouble and has to be rescued, and that's why the doctor was just so upset at her constantly.
Utterly.
All right, we're going to move on to ranking these episodes. We are ranking the first 300 Doctor Who television stories. We have ranked 188 of them.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
We're gonna move on to these. So
kicking ass.
I will start first.
Taking names.
Really like Flatline. So last episode, we ranked our highest ranking of a 12th Doctor story. We ranked Mummy on the Orient Express, and it's currently tied for 15th.
Yep, the internet was a buzz.
I mean, everybody was talking about it.
Phone lines were lighting up.
Everybody was talking about it. Yep. So, and so it was helpful to have just had that one so close to watching this. I really like this one. I probably like the Mummy on the Orient Express better. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up with this, out of 180 of these, I ranked this pretty high, but not quite as high as that one. So I ranked it 44th. I put it actually just above Pyramids of Mars, which we just watched, and just behind Hand of Fear and Macroterror, some older ones there, but that's kind of where it ended up. The closest NuWho there was like Amy's Choice, the Centauran Stratagem. So yeah, on the higher end of things, but we got a lot of these things now, so it takes more than this to break into the top 10 or something. Planet of the Giants, totally enjoyable. Just not much to it. I was thinking that after I ranked it, I thought like, oh, you think I might rank this higher because it does have a real 50s sci-fi feel, which I do like. But I ranked it 114th, right next to Journey of the Center of the TARDIS. I ranked it above the Three Doctors. I enjoyed this more than the Three Doctors. It's not as novel to me to see those reunion things. So
yeah.
So yeah, I ranked it around there. The ones that were similar to me, it was near to like the Wheel in Space, the Ice Warriors. I don't know, like it reminds me of these things. So fine, not in the bottom or anything like that, but kind of middle of the road.
We're pretty much in agreement here.
Oh, okay.
I've actually got Flatline at number 45, so very much in the same place. I got it near the Lodger, near the Bells of St. John, just below the Deadly Assassin, the classic series. I liked it. I think it's a great story. It's not overly complicated. It doesn't. It's one of those ones where I don't think it sticks with me. Where I'm like thinking about it all the time. Other stories I think about Mummy on the Orient Express twice a day. But it's one of those ones when you watch it, you're like, oh yeah, this is really good. Like this is a fun one and a neat story. And the Clara Doctor dynamic is really good. And I like the setup for the stuff. And yeah, it's nice to see her finally coming in. So a strong story, another strong story from Jamie Matheson. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, Planet of the Giants, similar place to yours as well. It's simple but solid. It's pulled up a little bit by just that dynamic of that original crew. I think they're just a really good group, and it's the right length. And I also think I sat down to watch it on like a rainy Saturday afternoon, and it's sort of it's a 50s. You're right, it's a 50s sci-fi black and white. There's like a coziness to it. that I really enjoyed. And again, because it's only 3 parts, it doesn't really outlive its welcome. So I had it. I had it number 98, Around the Fires of Pompeii, Power of Three, Androids of Taurus, so the closest classic series one below that. But yeah, pretty solid adventure. But yeah, not an all-time great, but definitely in the cozy category.
Well, I will put it into the supercomputer here, and Probe GPT tells me that Flatline, interestingly enough, you ranked it 43, I ranked it 44.
It's the new number one.
Together, yeah, it's the number one story.
I think there's something wrong with the Excel.
No, but together it's ranked 34 because we both. So but and it's actually right above the 5 Doctors, and right below the Stolen Earth, Journey's End. So it's in good company.
A good ranking.
Yep. The Planet of the Giants ends up ranked 109, tied with Doctor Who and the Silurians.
Oh yes, make sure you get that right.
Just behind Logopolis, just above Day of the Daleks. So well, interesting. We finally agree on something.
Let's see what the Doctor Who magazine people say. Flatline, is a very popular story, number 4 out of the Peter Capaldi.
Okay.
So just behind Mummy and the Orient Express, which is number 3. So up there as one of the most popular of the Capaldi stories. And Planet of Giants down on the Hartnell era. I think maybe a little too low, but it's at number 25. It's been hovering around 21 in 98, back in 98, but hovering around 24, 25 on the various surveys. But 25 out of 29. So in the bottom tier. Surprised me a little bit. I feel like it's maybe, but again, it's just there's nothing particularly remarkable about it other than the fact that there's a giant matchstick in it, and kids don't like that.
Well, I just want to point out that it remains the case that Peter Capaldi is by far your favorite Doctor with these rankings. He is ranked almost like 10 points below in terms of overall stories, below any other Doctor. I have him up there, so I still rank Matt Smith higher, but you you love this guy. You love the Scotsman.
Love him. I'm a Scotsman myself. What can I say?
There you go. So if you want to see this, and don't you? I mean, we just talked about it. Don't you want to see what we're talking about?
I think you do.
You can go to mindprobe.show/ranking. You can see the ranking there. You can go to mindprobe.show/watch or watch order. Oh, let me check. It doesn't matter. You can just go to mindprobe.show and you can click on these links. And you can see what we're going to watch next. You can check out the rankings. You can see how I rank, how you rank, how everybody ranks. You can also
go to mindprobe.show/secret file and see Porter's social security number, all the tax documents.
Yeah, and I would say I change it, but it's just the only place I can seem to remember to find that. So please don't go there and use that against me. I just really need it. You can also
just be cool, okay?
Ever just be cool about it, please. If you haven't already, you can also go there and check out. If you're listening to this, we have YouTube videos of each episode. You can watch us talking about this. They're linked there on the site. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to us on Spotify or Apple Podcast. Please do. Please give us some thumbs up and subscriptions and ratings. That would help. And tell friends about the show. It would all be great. All of it would be great.
Promote us on your podcast. You got a podcast?
Promote us.
Promote us.
Who does it?
I'm listening to a great one right now. I'm gonna cross promote it called Very Bad Wizards. It's very good. It's a very good podcast. Haha, but it's called Very Bad Wizards. It's a moral philosophy podcast. Don't click off yet. It's a moral philosophy podcast with a philosopher and a psychologist, and they just have very fun conversations about ethics and moral philosophy. It's got like 300 episodes, and I'm only on like episode 7 from like 2017. It's fantastic. So highly recommend. And we should do a crossover.
Say it again. It's Wizards. What was it?
Very Bad Wizards. It's from the Wizard of Oz. It's like I'm a very good man. I'm just a very bad wizard.
I like it. John, speaking of the watch order, what are we going to watch on next episode of this podcast?
What are we going to watch next? All right. Well, we've done our demographic research, and we know it's an interesting crossover. A lot of our listeners like gardening. Yeah, they are green thumbs. Yep. And so that would be the inspiration for our next episode. Who fans? How does your garden grow? Well, if you're Peter Capaldi and Clara and Danny, it grows all over London. It grows kind of out of control.
Yeah.
In the I'm going to say it's divisive. I'm going to say a divisive episode. Let me tell you from that period in the forest of the night. And I paired that with another, again, one of the easier ones to pair with, another story of out of control plants, the classic Fourth Doctor, Sarah Jane episode, The Seeds of Doom.
Well, I am excited to get excited about our other kingdom. You know, not the animal kingdom, plant kingdom.
Great
and
kingdom
hopefully
of
mushrooms will also get their day in the sun with
there's something, is it, did you ever see Day of the Triffids? That's a scary plant.
I've never seen that. I've heard of that. That's a Star Trek thing, right?
It's like a sci-fi. It was a book, I think. And the Triffids are like everybody goes blind, and then the plants start eating people. It's something.
I'm thinking of The Trouble with Tribbles.
Yeah, that would be very different.
We're not going to watch any of that. Mindprobe.show.